So first off, we have Matthis. I don't think there's a single good incarnation of Matthis, unfortunately, in any Fire Emblem game.
Fire Emblem fans have a reputation for having a ridiculous obsession with at least one character, and these obsessions form for plenty of different reasons. It could result from a character's personality, their gameplay, or even an armpit fetish. The point is that no matter how uninteresting or unimportant a character is, there are several Fire Emblem fans who will sing their praises no matter what. For example, one guy in the fanbase saw one of the most generic and poorly written villains ever made and thought, I'm gonna make a fan cam about him. That guy is me, by the way. But while there's plenty of hundreds of characters within the Fire Emblem franchise, there's one that I want to focus on. This is Matthis. He has no story significance, he barely has any screen time, he's outclassed by a bunch of other cavaliers, and he's also the key to understanding the franchise. Matthis is a cavalier that's in all 4 of the Arcania Fire Emblems. He's the sister of the LTC goddess herself, but because Matthis was doing a little trolling, he has to join against Marth's army. But his sister was with said army, so he joins them and becomes a playable unit. Even with his limited screen time, Matthis actually has a fairly interesting character arc. He starts out as a coward, but when he talks to Lena, he musters up the bravery to fight for the side of good in spite of his fear. Or as he puts it, he's going to be one of the dashing instead of one of the dastardly. Then 3 years later, Lena gets kidnapped, and Matthis musters up this bravery again and even joins up with someone he openly hates for the sake of his family. Matthis is a pretty interesting character by Arcania standards because as evidenced by his FE12 endgame quote, it's not that he completely eliminated his fear, but rather that he's able to pull through no matter how afraid he is. But that's just one half of Matthis because there's also his gameplay to consider. Now, some of what I'll say will apply to all of his appearances, but what you need to know is that I'm specifically going to look at his FE11 incarnation for 2 reasons. One, because FE1 and FE3 don't have the CBT difficulty options that later games have, so comparing units isn't as important. And 2, because FE12 is his absolute worst appearance, so I want to be generous to him. Also, I'm not a galaxy-brained Fire Emblem player who knows absolutely everything about optimal play, so please take this with a grain of salt. Matthis has a fair bit going for him, specifically because of his class. He has more movement and can get access to lances, which are an important weapon type in FE11. But the problem is that there's other cavs that are better than Matthis' job, or more specifically, Cain, Abel, and Hardin. I created a chart to compare Matthis to those 3 as well as these 2 jabronis. Green represents areas where Matthis is statistically better, and red represents areas where he's statistically worse. Lighter shades of those 2 colors mean that the specific base or growth is the same for both of the units being compared, so the unit with better availability gets the narrow edge because they have more chances to level up. And gold represents areas where both units have the same value but also a 0% growth rate, so they'll be equal no matter what. In terms of his growth rates, Matthis has a fair amount of advantages in comparison to his 3 main competitors. His HP and defense are better than all 3, and depending on the cav, he could be better in strength, luck, or both. However, he gets beaten out across the board in the areas of speed and skill, and by a greater margin than his advantages too. And when bases are factored in, Matthis' viability goes from bad to worse. You see, bases are generally considered to be more important than growths, and Matthis has undeniably worse bases than all 3 competitors. There is only a single advantage Matthis has on Cain and Abel, that being the former's lance rank. For everything else, Matthis' stats are equaled or surpassed. And keep in mind that there's 3 chapters separating Matthis from the Christmas cav, so they can easily gain enough levels to create a gap or widen any pre-existing ones. Hardin, on the other hand, surpasses Matthis across the board, and since he joins 1 chapter after Matthis as opposed to 3, it's not like Matthis can do much to bridge the gaps. So all in all, Matthis is outclassed by Cain, Abel, and Hardin. He's not the worst cav in FE11 just because Violent exists, and just being a cav gives him an advantage over a lot of other units. But there's no reason to use Matthis over the other 3 if you have them. That's just the thing though, you might not have the other 3. The Arcania games are really interesting in terms of how unit distribution is handled. When creating FE1, director Shozo Kaga simply could not comprehend the fact that players would just reset the game when one of their units died.
Reality includes time.
Time, huh? Thanks for the tip.
So he aimed to make sure that the game can be beaten no matter who dies and created what I would like to call replacement units. Basically, replacement units are ones that have the same class as another unit from earlier in the game, and generally they'll be worse than the unit that preceded them, but still usable if you invest in them. And if a mainstay on your team dies, then yeah, you're probably gonna invest in their replacement. In interviews, Kaga described Fire Emblem as a game where you create your own unique story, but what good is making your own story if you can't make your own heroes? This is why across the franchise, there's something about Fire Emblem characters that feels so personal. Everyone's experience with any given character is going to be drastically different. For example, most people wouldn't consider Luthier to be a particularly great unit, but I completely forgot to get a better mage in Act 1 like the dumb idiot I was, so he ended up being a mainstay on my team. While this philosophy applies to every Fire Emblem game on some level, the Arcania games hone in on it due to the aforementioned trick to unit distribution. And Matthis is a character that embodies the philosophy, whether intentionally or not. He's weak in both story and gameplay, but he's willing to persevere and give everything he's got to help the side of good. Against all odds, Matthis will end up as a textbook zero to hero story for some players. In other words, he's the key to understanding the appeal of Fire Emblem characters. Online, Matthis would end up having a small but vocal following. Plenty of people would sing the praises of this dashing man through various memes and shitposts, including the iconic Matthis moment. Plenty of people will go out of their way to have him perform ridiculous feats in gameplay. One guy even went out of his way to mod Matthis into Rivals of Aether. And finally, there's a campaign to get him into Fire Emblem Heroes for the upcoming Choose Your Legends event. Now, I've never played Fire Emblem Heroes, and it's a game I really don't want to support because of how scummy its gacha system is. But when it comes to Matthis' campaign, I can't... Well, it is I, beloved Big Gnome lore character, Alex Yick Ransona. I'm here for a very important reason. I came up with a way to destroy Heroes and save the franchise once and for all. What you need to know is that Matthis is a character who is so powerful and so dashing that if he was added to Heroes, the game would immediately implode because its dastardly nature would not be able to handle him. So what you need to do right now is vote for Matthis and choose your legend. Did you really think that posting this right before the event was a coincidence? A vote for Matthis is a vote against the wretched hive of scum and villainy that is Fire Emblem Heroes. And I guess I should say that since the Choose Your Legends event seems to have a botting problem, I am not encouraging anyone to bot for Matthis. I am fucking demanding that they bot for Matthis. If you have even the slightest bit of technological know-how, then it is your moral obligation to bot for Matthis. And I can hear the detractors getting riled up right now. To all who oppose my righteous cause, I just want to ask, what characters are you seriously going to vote for? Byleth? Bernadetta? Crom? Don't make me laugh. If you plan to vote for someone who isn't Matthis, and no matter who that character is, I have one thing to say to you. Your character means nothing! Your vote serves zero purpose! Vote for Matthis! Now! Later, fuckers! Well, now that unfunny YouTuber skit is over, there's one thing I'm going to end this on. Childhood is when you love Matthis ironically. Adulthood is when you realize that your love for Matthis was completely unironic the whole time. Thanks for watching.